Yeah, I know I'm pretty cheap, but that didn't take very long. Now that I've got the bearing out, I can see this might be a problem. That's pretty specialized, but if I could just measure the width and the diameter, and it's got a 5/8 hole, I would put a bearing in here, and then I can go ahead and put these Allen heads that I already had with lock nuts on it. So let's see if we can find this bearing. Okay, well good. I found this bearing on Amazon. I'll get it here tomorrow. It was $23. It was a Timken bearing, and this is a little misleading here, so check this out. It's got 2 bushings in it to bring it down to 5/8. This same bearing right here is a common bearing used in air conditioning compressor front clutches. So, we'll get that in. I'll save myself 75 bucks, maybe almost 100. But you guys know how I enjoy doing stuff like this. It's pretty darn satisfying. So we'll get that bearing in and put that together. All right, got the bearings in, and I painted these 2 halves like this. Where I grinded it on this side, you can see it was going to be bare metal, and I don't really want it to rust, and I will use that side going down because water could pool in this. But here's all the stuff. Let's start putting it back together. I line these up to make sure I get it oriented correctly in case the holes are a hair off or something. I don't know. That's perfect. Alright, now with the seat out of the way, I think what I want to do, I started thinking about working on the steering stuff, but I don't have the belt on the bottom of the motor yet for the pumps to work. So let's take the stuff off this motor, make sure there's not a bunch of trash in there, figure out why they had to put baling wire on that air filter assembly in there, maybe paint some of this stuff, whatnot. I think I'll get this bar right here out of the way first. Let's have some room. So I see what happened here. This cracked, and instead of welding it, they put a little bracket right there. This cracked, and they baling wired it together. I think that's going to be an easy fix there. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this bracket off here real quick. So I think right away I'm going to go ahead and order a fuel pump for it. I think I've got some filters. I've got new hose to put on here for everything. And also gaskets for the carburetor and for the intake manifold. Alright, so as I was cleaning this thing off here, I did notice this when I first bought it, and as I was cleaning it up I remembered about it. I think I'm going to grind that weld down. It does not feel like it's welded under the bottom, but I think I can use this piece of angle iron, cut a piece probably from here to here, notch it out, weld it the best I can. So let's get started. Take this deck spring off of here so I can have some room to work. Well, that's not particularly pretty, but I think that's better than not doing anything. Alright folks, so we're back at it today, and here's a few things that I bought. I needed these gaskets right here for the carburetor, and I was able to find them on Amazon with a lot of looking, and they're going to be close. I don't even know if they're perfectly right, but I think they'll work. They were 10 bucks for this 3 pieces. Also needed a fuel pump. The fuel pump was about 18, so you're looking at 28 bucks there, almost 30. And I found a kit that had these two together, fuel line, a shutoff valve that I won't use, some clamps that I could save, a fuel filter that I could probably use, and a couple of spark plugs. All of that together with a carburetor was about 40 bucks. And I just couldn't see spending almost 30 for this, and for $10 more I can get a carburetor. I don't know that I would need it, and sometimes these little Chinesium carburetors don't work real well, but we're going to give that a shot first, and then if it doesn't work real well, we'll go ahead and take this one apart and see if we can service the old one. I did get this bracket welded up and painted, and the rest of the stuff I'm not going to do much to it. I'm going to clean it a little bit. But before I put that carburetor on and see if everything works, I really need to address all the wiring on this thing. I had taken the dashboard off and cleaned it up, painted it silver, and put some new labels on it. And I took the wiring harness out. The person that owned it before had bypassed all the original starting mechanism and came right off the ignition switch and went directly to the starter signal. And I wanted to figure out what was going on with that, as well as the wires underneath the dash to some of these little lights and so forth were really crispy, and I'm not quite sure why. I'm gonna have to change that out. So after I took this out of here, I realized it was, and I put power to it, I realized it's impossible for me to bypass every single safety switch that's on this. I even have a decent wiring diagram of this, and trying to follow this through everything was next to impossible for me. You have to understand on these kind of deals, all the safety things that they put in here, so you can't start it unless you're sitting down, unless you have the parking brake on, unless you have the blade disengaged. The starting mechanism for this goes through all of that, and it has 3 relays. And I wasn't going to be able to take it and put it on the ground, put voltage to it, and test circuits. It was just too much for me to wrap my head around. So what we're going to do is take this, fix the crispy ends on those lights and make sure all that connection is good. Resolder this connection here that he had cut off. And then I'm going to take it, I'm going to go ahead and lay it in here and plug it into all the wiring harness here on the motor. And then check it to make sure it works while it's all sitting out. Once I have that all working properly and it seems like everything is good, I won't even permanently put it in place. At that point, I can put the shroud, all the stuff on here in the carburetor, and this stuff here is kind of covered up with that shroud. And from the video earlier, you can see it's kind of a puzzle pulling this all apart with a throttle mechanism and all. It's going to be a chore for my old memory to remember how to put this back in. But let's start with the wiring. Let's fix that. Get it all hooked up like it was with all of the safety pieces in place, and then get it to send a signal to the starter and get it to send a signal to the wire that goes to the bottom of the carburetor, because it has to have this signal right here for it to open up the carburetor for it to run. So I need to make sure that's got power going to it with the key on, and make sure that the starter solenoid kicks in, so to speak. So let's get started on it. Okay, now that we've got these wires hooked up how I had them marked before, and we need to figure out which one of these wires right here goes off to the starter solenoid. I know this one goes down to the clutch for the belt, and so let's turn the key on and see which one of these it is. Oh, that one might be it. Let's see. Yep, sure enough. Let's plug that in and see if it works. Nice. So I wonder if it's getting spark. Let's check to see if it's getting spark. We'll throw some carburetor spray in that intake, see if it'll fire. Alright, we're not getting any fire. Let's see if we can figure that one out. Alright, chasing my bird's nest of wiring here. This originally was not hooked up properly, and how I had it marked was not really correct. Now looking at this gray wire, according to the wiring diagram, the gray wire came over to the oil pressure switch. Yeah, head temperature one goes to this orange, which is correct. I did find that this particular wire here, key off, grounds the coil, and that's what this one was hooked to, that goes to the gray and black wire, which goes to that buzzer up there for this oil pressure sensor. Let's check to see if it's getting any spark now. That buzzer is hooked up properly over here on this end. It's not seeing any oil pressure, so it's beeping, telling me the oil pressure is low. That would probably go off after you start it up. But let's see if we get any spark coming out right there. Oh yeah, got plenty of spark. Let's see if it'll pop over. Oh yeah, perfect. Alright, so I think I'm good to go to take it and wire all this back together and get this all hooked up, and then I can go ahead and start putting the outside of the motor together and then the carburetor. So that looks pretty good. Probably better than it was originally, maybe. So I went ahead and replaced all 3 fuses for those things, put some new ones in it. So that ought to be good. I'm going to finish zip tying this stuff up in there, and then we'll go ahead and put this cover on. Alright, so I just found this out. I was putting this screw in this valve cover, and it's just completely stripped out. Tempted to put a big old fat wood screw in there, but let's take this bracket off real quick and maybe we can identify why that's stripped out. Maybe I could put an insert in it.